Maggie Toulouse-Oliver has served as Bernalillo County Clerk since 2007, and last year Toulouse-Oliver was the only New Mexico representative to testify before the Presidential Commission on Elections. The commission lauded the county's best practices, including the innovative My Vote Center app.
Maggie Toulouse-Oliver, thank you so much for being with us today. I want to ask you first, in your opinion, which is a more important duty of the state's chief elections officer? Is it encouraging more people to participate in the process or tightening that process to prevent things like voter fraud?
Well, I don't think those two things are mutually exclusive. I think they can both happen at the same time. I think they're both important duties. I'll tell you where my priority is, though. My priority is in trying to enhance and foster voter participation in our state. We have seen too many elections with very low voter turnout, and what we're seeing is elected officials who are only responsive to that very small minority of the electorate that's participating in our election process. So we need to be doing more, it's very clear, to encourage people to register to vote, to participate, and to know how, where, and when they can cast a ballot.
Your opponent, Diana Duran, said recently she's been involved in 2 election contests that ended up in a tie. And that's why she says every time one person who is not eligible to vote votes in an election, it disenfranchises the rights of every eligible voter.
Well, with all due respect to Diana Duran, that's not the definition of disenfranchisement. The franchise is the ability for a voter to participate in the election process. We have a history in the United States of expanding the franchise. Of course, we had suffrage for everybody in 1920 once women came into the process, and lowering the voting age more recently than that. So really what we need to talk about and what we need to focus on is not the very rare occurrences of voter fraud that occasionally are able to slip through the cracks of what is essentially a human system and can't by definition be perfect, but again, in fostering that voter participation. If we're concerned about tie elections, let's make sure that every voter has participated in the process, and that way we can ensure that everyone has had a voice in that process.
You used to work for a liberal environmental group, and your campaign has been endorsed by 10 different labor unions. But you say your opponent has hyper-politicized the office. How would you assure voters that you won't do the same, except for Democrats?
Well, I think all you have to do is look at my record as county clerk for the last 8 years. The minute I walked into the county clerk's office, any personal political views that I held were left at the door, and they've been left at the door for 8 years. I've worked very closely with both political parties to improve the political process here, or the election process here in Bernalillo County. I think if you talk to Republican candidates, the Republican Party, they will tell you my door has always been open to them. My concern is fair, nonpartisan election administration, and it always has been. I am a believer in fair election processes, because at the end of the day, we need to be able to trust the outcome, regardless of whoever the winner is.
You've been the clerk, as you said, since 2007. What are the 3 accomplishments, the 3 top accomplishments that you think have prepared you to be Secretary of State?
It's hard to rattle off a 3. I think the major accomplishment that we've achieved in Bernalillo County is that we've modernized the election process. We've taken it from a problematic, sometimes error-ridden process to being, frankly, a best practice model for the rest of the country. In fact, when I went before the Presidential Election Commission last summer, we talked to them about all the improvements we've made in Bernalillo County, and they're looking at things like vote centers on Election Day, like our My Vote Center app, and other improvements that we've made to things like poll worker training as best practices, and they're recommending those around the country. So I think the overall accomplishment is taking a process that was problematic and had issues, and now we're basically serving as a model for the rest of the country.
Your website says, and I quote, "Instead of encouraging New Mexicans to exercise their civic duty and vote, Duran has used her office to intimidate voters and make absurd claims. She sent misleading letters to more than 177,000 voters, leading them to think they couldn't vote." But isn't she required by federal law to clean up the rolls and make sure, for example, that dead people aren't still registered to vote?
Well, first of all, with regard to dead people, we remove people who have become deceased from the voter rolls all the time. The voter confirmation mailing is a necessary process, but it's only one process that we can undertake to try to clean up the rolls here in New Mexico. There are a lot of other things that we should be doing, such as interstate database sharing, and we're not even connecting the voter registration database in our state with other databases in our state. state, such as the motor vehicle division, to know when a person has moved. So there are a lot of proactive things that we could and should be doing to try to clean up the voter rolls. The voter confirmation mailing is just one piece, and frankly, it's an anachronism. And those letters do contain language that lead people to think that perhaps their voter registration is no longer valid or they can't participate. So we need to look at ways of doing both things, both making sure that the voter rolls are clean as well as making sure that voters feel like their participation in the process is being encouraged.
So you're saying that what she did was lawful, but you object to some of the language in the letters that were sent.
Oh yeah, I've never said that the voter confirmation mailing is not a lawful process, but I think we need to be doing so very much more, and I do think we need to be spending a lot more time on voter education and letting folks know what is this about and why we're doing it in the first place.
In 2012, the current Secretary of State eliminated straight party voting, voter convenience, or a crutch, depending on your perspective. She said the law authorizing it was no longer in effect, so she had to eliminate it. What would you have done in her place?
Well, actually, the law prescribes that the Secretary of State can prescribe the form of the ballot. And so in past elections, this is what previous Secretaries of State had continued to do. In this election, for example, you'll find your ballot has little party emblems next to every candidate on the ballot. And there's nothing in the law that requires that to be on the ballot. So this is the Secretary of State exercising her authority to draft the ballot to a form that she prescribes. That's something that is in the Secretary of State's responsibility wheelhouse, and that's something that I would do moving forward. I really feel that voters with a long ballot and paper ballots being in effect need a way to try to shorten the process for themselves if they are able to do so and want to and elect to utilize that option.
Are there any other things at the top of your list that you would do immediately if you were elected? What would you change and do differently right away?
Well, thanks for the question. I think there are a lot of rules that are still sort of out there in between land that need to be solidified. Rules about campaign finance law and how that's implemented. Rules about the election process and how that's implemented. We're going to have a legislative session coming right up after I come into office, and so there's a lot of work that needs to be done to continue to clean up the election code, to bring it into 2014 or 2015 at that point, and make sure that county clerks have the tools, training, and resources that they need to better do their jobs.
In terms of voter ID, polls show that the public supports the idea that you should have to show photo ID at the polls, just like you have to cash a check or buy a beer anywhere. Yet you strongly oppose requiring voters to show ID. Why is this so hard to ask?
Well, first and foremost, you know, it's not your constitutional right to buy a beer or what have you. Voting is a constitutional right. And actually recently in the state of Texas, a federal judge struck down their photo voter ID law, arguing that it's a poll tax and that it creates a barrier to the ballot box, to people being able to undertake their right to vote. And so I am against it for that reason. I think the evidence shows that there's so few cases of voter impersonation at the polls, 31 out of a billion votes cast in the last 12 years in America, versus we know for a fact that tens to hundreds of thousands of people are being prevented from casting a ballot. In fact, a recent congressional study came out that showed in at least 2 states with voter ID laws that voter turnout declined in elections due to these really restrictive new laws. So again, it's not solving a problem, but it's creating a new one if we bring voter ID into the mix.
Speaking of turnout, states with same-day voter registration have higher turnout, but critics say it makes the process vulnerable to fraud. How would you make sure, if we did this, that people who register on the same day they vote don't vote in more than one place?
So we already have the technology in place to prevent that from happening. We have ballot on demand and electronic poll books at all of the polling places in Bernalillo County, and we have the technical capacity to make that the case in all counties across the state. It's just a matter of investing the tools and resources into those counties. But I think if you look at all the states that have same-day voter registration, there isn't any evidence that that type of activity is happening. I think the evidence that it does show is that it does encourage, again, that participation. Often people aren't thinking about the election until election day or until right beforehand. We have a 28-day deadline in New Mexico. That's really arbitrary. It's from a time when county clerks had to hand write out voter rosters at the polls. And I think now that we have the technology in place and we're able to ensure those safeguards, there's really no need to have that deadline in place anymore.
How long do you think it would take you to implement it across the state if you were elected?
I think it's pretty quick. We don't have to reinvent the wheel. We can look at other states' models for how they're doing things. We already have the technology in place here, and it's merely a matter of just investing and expanding in that to make sure that every precinct in the county has that capability.
Maggie Toulouse Oliver, thank you so much for being with us today.
Thanks, Gwyneth.